Let me ask you something. Think about the voice that's probably reading these words in your head right now. For most of us, that internal narrator is a constant companion, right? It's always there, helping shape our thoughts and guide our actions. But what if for some people, that voice is completely silent? Today, we're diving into the quiet world of something called endophagia and exploring what it reveals about the very nature of our own minds. So just take a second with this. As you're reading these words, do you actually hear a voice sounding them out? I bet for most of you, the answer is an immediate yuck. This inner monologue is so fundamental to how we experience the world, we almost never stop to even think about it. It's just there. And for a long time, science was right there with us. The assumption was pretty simple. This inner speech was a universal part of being human. It was the engine of our thoughts. But it turns out the reality of our inner worlds is far more diverse and honestly far stranger than we ever imagined. So before we get into the silence, let's just quickly talk about what this inner voice actually is for the millions and maybe billions of people who have it. This is the voice that helps you make a grocery list in your head. It's the voice you use to practice what you're going to say in a difficult conversation. Or maybe it just narrates your life as you walk down the street. It's a mental tool we are using constantly, most of the time without even realizing it. Okay, but now let's flip the script. Let's get into a completely different kind of mind. One where all that inner chatter is just gone, replaced by silence. Seriously, imagine that for a second. No internal narrator, no voice sounding out words as you read this. For a pretty significant chunk of the population, this silence is just their normal, everyday reality. Scientists have actually given us a name, an endophagia. It's the formal term for not having an inner voice. And this is super important. It's not a disorder. It's not a problem. It's a natural variation in human consciousness, kind of like being left-handed or right-handed. But this raises a huge question, right? If this inner voice is a tool that most of us use, do people who lack it think differently? Does this purely internal subjective difference actually have real measurable effects on how they think? Well, a couple of researchers, Johanna Niedergaard and Gary Lupien, decided to find out. Okay, so in their first experiment, they tested something called phonological skills, basically how we process sounds. Participants saw pairs of pictures, let's say a picture of a sock and a picture of a clock, and they just had to decide if the names for those things rhymed. Seems simple, but think about it. It forces you to generate the words in your mind and then compare how they sound. And whoa, the results were striking. People who reported having a strong inner voice were consistently accurate, but the people with anaphobia, they were significantly less accurate. So the big takeaway here is that without that internal voice to say the words sock and clock to yourself, the mental job of comparing their sounds becomes much, much harder. So next up, they tested verbal working memory. When you remember a phone number somebody tells you, you probably repeat it to yourself over and over in your head, right? Well, that's your inner speech acting like a mental scratch pad. In this experiment, people just had to remember and then recall lists of 5 simple words. And yeah, once again, the difference was totally clear. The group with more inner speech consistently remembered more of the words. It really seems like that inner voice acts like a mental loop, a way to keep information live and active in our short-term memory. Without that loop, the words just seem to fade away faster. Okay, but this is where the study gets really, really fascinating. The researchers started wondering, could people with an endophagia make up for their lack of an internal tool by just using an external one? What would happen if they just said the words out loud? And bam, this is where it all just clicks into place. The moment the participants with less inner speech were told to say the words out loud, that performance gap, it completely vanished. Their accuracy shot right up to match the other group. This is such a huge insight. It tells us that inner speech isn't some magical property of the mind, it's a tool. And if you don't happen to have the internal version, the external one, your own voice, works just as well. So this confirmation that inner speech really does act like a cognitive tool leads us right to the next big question. Where does this tool even come from? Is it something we're all born with, or is it something we learn along the way? Well, one of the most influential theories actually comes from the world of developmental psychology, and it suggests our inner voice is something we build, not something we're just given at birth. But famous psychologist Lev Vygotsky proposed this really elegant 3-step process. First, when we're little kids, our thoughts are guided by social speech, basically adults talking to us. Then we start talking to ourselves out loud. Vygotsky called this private speech. You've seen kids do this, right? They narrate what they're doing as they play. And finally, over time, this external monologue turns inward. It becomes silent. It becomes our inner speech. It's essentially a tool for guiding ourselves, but we learn from our social world and then internalize. But hold on, because there's another much more provocative theory. It frames the origin of inner speech not as a tool for thinking, but as a tool for survival in a really complex social world. A researcher named Sean O'Connor proposes this incredible evolutionary arms race. The theory, which you can see laid out here, basically goes like this. Early on, we thought out loud with that private speech, but that makes your plans totally vulnerable, right? Anyone could hear you plotting. This created an evolutionary pressure. The individuals who could internalize that speech, who could hide their strategies from competitors, they had a massive survival advantage. So in this view, inner speech didn't evolve to help us think. It evolved to help us hide. So here you have two powerful and really compelling, but very different explanations. Is our inner voice a developmental tool for self-guidance, like Vygotsky thought, or is it an evolutionary weapon for social concealment, like O'Connor suggests? Is it a tool for thought, or is it a tool for secrecy? The jury is still out. Ultimately, though, the very existence of an endothesia forces us to zoom out and recognize that our inner mental landscapes can be profoundly, fundamentally different from one person to the next. The silent mind isn't an anomaly. It's a point on a vast spectrum of cognitive experience. It's a powerful reminder that there is no single correct way to think or to be human. And it's not alone. Some people have what's called aphantasia, which means they can't visualize images in their mind's eye. And others report unsymbolized thinking, where they experience a clear thought without any accompanying words or pictures, just the pure concept itself. And all of this leaves us with a final, really powerful question. We spend our lives assuming that other people experience the world in basically the same way we do. But the discovery of things like endothesia proves that our inner world can be fundamentally different in ways we're only just beginning to grasp. It just makes you wonder what other hidden variations in consciousness are out there, just waiting to be discovered.